Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today we wanted to talk about why moving your superannuation into cash could cost you $250,000. Michael, your podcast, your very catchy title. What do you mean?
Well, I guess the audience is probably sick of us banging on about it's a mistake to move your money into cash at this point in time, and you're moving out. Most people moved out at minus 37%, a couple of weeks ago, and they'll probably move it back in when things settle down. And we've talked about when things settle down.
I was actually going to refer to that previous podcast, which touches on a lot of these points. When things settle down, I think we recorded that. That came out about the 3rd of April, so it's worth a listen. Yeah, so, I mean, we've spoken, and go back and have a listen to that, of course, but when things settle down, what that really means is that something that was valued at $1 and has dropped in share price terms to 65 cents or 60 cents, or where it is when someone has moved that money out and into cash, when things settle down, recognise that the price is back to $1 at that point in time. So wanted to highlight the difference. Wanted to be able to quantify what type of mistake that is for people. What the cost when of that they actually what the true cost of that is. Yeah. And so we've done some numbers around that. Because we've spoken a lot as well in our podcasts over the last couple of weeks, where we've spoken at length about market volatility, and we've said, look, it's really dangerous not to have a strategy in place, and it's dangerous not to have a plan in place, because with the lack of a plan, it seems like lunacy, doesn't it? You're watching your money effectively disappear before your eyes. Yeah, and $500,000 balanced fund in superannuation dollars is worth somewhere around $375,000 now. So the value of that has fallen on average by about 25%. Yeah. So it seems crazy not to just watch it fall, and not do anything about it. Yeah. So we hear quite a lot, and there's almost a universal saying, "I'll get out now and I'll wait until things settle down." Yeah. And like I said, I've made a comment before where I think what people believe that means is my balance has dropped by 25%. I'll get out now and I'll move that money into cash, and I'll just continue to watch the price fall. Yeah. And it'll fall to 40% down or 50% down or wherever it is, and then I'll move back up in a perfectly straight line. Yeah. And what I'll do is that I'll just bring that money back across in where I went out at. Yeah. And what we know is that people miss that boat all of the time. And by the time that things settle down, they've sold out at 65 cents or 70 cents or 75 cents or wherever they sold out in the dollar. Yeah. And they've actually bought back in at $1 at the dollar. So the thing with this is that, and that's, I guess, why we wanted to actually do this. Can you hear me there, Michael? I can, yeah. Yeah. So why I think this is actually a really useful exercise is because you don't see the impact. If you were to make that mistake and move out and move into cash now and then wait till things settle down and get back in, what happens is, because you're locking in that price or that loss at that point in time, you sit that money in cash. Then when you go to get back in, no one says, as you're getting back in, no one says, hey, by the way, do you know that you're now having to buy in at a higher price? There's no one's sitting there making that very tangible in front of your nose. So it sort of can seem like I got out at this price, things settled down, I got back in, and it hasn't really cost me much because I didn't see that. I didn't see the extra price that I'm having to pay for those shares on the way back in. So
that's the experiment that you've sort of run here, is to show and quantify what the effect of that is over the last 10 years of someone's working life.
That's right. So we talk quite often about a couple that come to see us for the first time are age 55.
Yeah.
And typically together they have somewhere in the vicinity of about $500,000 in their superannuation funds at that point in time. Yeah. We also talk, and typically that's in a balanced fund. And a balanced fund, to give you a basic overview, would have of that $500,000 that they have in superannuation, about $150,000 of that would be in cash and fixed interest. Yeah. Money that doesn't really grow all that strongly, but doesn't fall in the event of a drop. And they have about $350,000 across growth assets, which are, largely Australian companies, global companies, and a few other different types of assets as well. Yeah. So we talk about, just by the pure power of compounding over the next 10 years, from age 55 to age 65, they're on track for that $500,000 to grow to about $1 million over that period of time, to about $1 million. Yeah. And that assumes an average rate of return inside their super fund of about 6% before earnings tax is deducted. It assumes that they're on a combined salary of $150,000, so we'll call that $75,000 each. Yep. It assumes that only their employer's 9.5% super contributions are going in, so they're not putting any money in themselves.
Yep. Yep.
So with those things assumed, that $500,000 grows to almost $1 million over the last 10 years they're working on. It grows to $995,000.
Which and I guess we won't even get into today as to why our job for most people is that, even though it seems like $1 million is a lot of money, it's normally below where they need to be, and normally our job is to add an extra $500,000 onto that and get them to sort of 1.5 million instead. But
look, we might even make that one of our next podcasts that we do, just to explain the difference, just explain the difference, and really how having a plan in place and a strategy in place
can do that.
helps you actually keep your fortitude during periods of time of this market volatility.
Yeah, but this example you're doing now is just someone who's just the average person on the street has got their money in a balanced option. They basically haven't made a decision as to where their money should be invested within their super account, and they're just going to work. Employers paying into their super account, they're probably not really aware of what's going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, what I wanted to compare today is purely the cost of actually moving money into cash while the markets have dropped, and then moving it back in when things have settled down. So, in the test case, or the control case, we'll call it. What I'm looking at is that couple that have that $500,000 combined in the balance fund, and they don't panic and move to cash. What they do is they allow the markets to drop away and then to return and grow from there. So that control case grows them from $500,000 to $995,000 over the last 10 years of their working life. Mm-hmm. And again, that's without them putting any money in, just their employer contributions of 9.5% on a combined wage of $150,000. Rate of return of 6% before earnings tax, super earnings tax is taken out, gets them to $995,000.
Yeah.
What I want to look at is the part B of that. So someone who's moved their money to cash right now, we know that they've done that when the average value of their balance fund has dropped by about 25%.
Yep.
And what they've done in recent times is they've seen, the starting value at the start of 2020 was about $500,000. They've looked at it again in the last few weeks, and they've seen that the balance is only $375,000 on paper. Yep. And they've said, stop this now. I can't handle this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move out. We're going to move that money to cash. And I can guarantee you they've said when things settle down, we'll actually get back in.
And this isn't I guess when you're talking about it, this isn't an anecdotal thing of an individual opinion of this is based on, like you said, emails we've received from Sun Super and places like that have said, yeah, we've got a higher than usual call volume of people ringing up to make these changes. It's taking us longer than usual to process paperwork, things like that, because there are many, many people doing this, and that's what's driving that price down.
Yeah, look, there's many, many people doing it right now. And yeah, we've received those emails, as you said, over the last couple of weeks where people, your Sun Supers and your Q Supers and those other super funds have emailed us and said, if you're trying to lodge any paperwork for any clients that you have, then there's slower, be patient. We've been inundated with calls of people wanting to move, members wanting to move to cash.
Yeah.
So it's happening right now, which is why we wanted to put this out right now. Because if you've actually made this decision recently, or you're about to make this decision, we just want you to appreciate the full cost of this, because it's seemingly a good thing to do. But I'm going to show you, it's going to cost. Well, it'll cost the average person that does this. They'll have about $250,000 less at retirement, by this one decision that they're making to stop the pain right now.
Yeah. So you've assumed their $500,000 balance has dropped to $375,000. They've sold out and moved into cash, and then they've waited 12 months until things settle down. And again, this is a bit of forecasting to say if prices recovered in 12 months' time, which we're not saying at all that will happen, or that when that would happen, or putting a timeline on that. But as an example, you're saying when share prices get back to where they were, these people are moving back in.
So they're moving back in. So basically what's happening here, here's the difference. So in the control case, so the people that did nothing, their balance fund fell from $500,000 to $375,000.
Yeah.
And it may have fallen away further than that before it finally turned up and started to move up again.
And still may fall further from here.
And still may fall further from here. However, when it gets back to $500,000, those people have $500,000 at that point in time.
Yep.
They don't have $375,000. And here's the thing: the people that have moved that money to cash, and are moving back in when things have settled down, they only have $375,000.
Yeah.
So so not only is that $125,000 gone for good, which it is, it's gone for good, never to come back.
Yeah.
It's whatever that would have grown to over
the next 10 years.
And it's even further than that if you extrapolate that. It's only what that would have grown to over the next 10 years. Or 9 years, and then beyond that, it's the compounding effect of that for
I think that's a
long time in retirement.
That's a really interesting way of thinking of it. Making that tangible is to like you said there. Once the person who doesn't move into cash, once their super gets back to 500,000, they've got 500,000. The person who's moved that into cash, they've got 375. They've got 375. That's it. That is literally the figure they have lost. Is the difference between where they would have been had they not moved into cash and where they're sitting now. And that's, like I say, you're looking at your balance. If you've done that, it's 375. You're not seeing it grow, but you're also not seeing it drop. That's probably a relief in the short term. You know what I mean? You get your next statement and it says 375, and you go, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad I don't have to watch that go down anymore. But what you're really not seeing is that recovery, that growth back to 500,000. You've missed that. That is money that you have lost.
Look, and I think why people don't realise it is it's pretty easy to move out and it's pretty easy to move back in. And so if you were doing this with property, so you had a $500,000 house, the price dropped to $375,000. You panicked and you sold it at that point in time.
Yeah,
you waited till the house prices recouped from $375,000 back to $500,000, and you said, "Okay, I'm going to buy back in now."
Yeah.
You would become aware fairly quickly because you'd be borrowing $125,000 at that stage to do that.
That's a really good example, because you'd then be, for the next 10 years, you'd be paying off that loan, and every time you made a loan repayment, you'd be thinking, "Oh, geez, that hurts. Why did I do that? I wish I didn't have to pay this loan back now," which is the difference in those prices.
That's right. So I don't think people realise that, because they what they're essentially doing is they're buying back in at a higher price than what they sold out, and they just don't realise. So, they had 500,000 shares at $1 a share. They watched the price drop to 75 cents a share. Yeah. They sold those 500,000 shares at 75 cents a share, which gave them 375,000 of cash.
Yeah.
They waited till the price got back to $1, aka when things have settled down.
Yeah.
And they took that 375,000 and bought back in at $1. So they bought back in 375,000 shares. When if they just sat and remained patient and just held on, they would have retained 500,000 shares at that price.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So, and they just don't realise it's happening because of the fact that they're just seeing they're seeing one line on a statement from a super fund provider. They're not seeing not seeing in the house example, hey, we had to borrow $125,000 to buy back the same house that we panicked and sold at the bottom.
Yeah. And like you said, it's very easy to do. And so like both emotionally it's easy to do and logistically as well. So it's very easy emotionally. You're in pain. You're watching that balance drop. You've worked hard all your life and you've got 500 grand in super and now you're watching it drop. It's a painful thing. If you're not aware of what's going on behind the scenes and you don't understand that price mechanism and how all that works, you're just watching it going, this is torturous. And so emotionally very hard to do. And no doubt you're also watching on the news, talking to people who are panicking, selling, all those sorts of things. And it just keeps compounding that emotional turmoil and that pain and makes you want to act and do something. And then if you do decide to do that, logistically, it's very easy. You ring your super fund, they send you out a one-page form. You tick a box to say, I want to move into cash. You send the form back. That's it. It's not, you don't have to ring a real estate agent. You don't have to, do any of those sorts of things. You don't have to wait for settlement. You don't have to do any of that. It's just one form. So it's almost too easy.
And people are receiving bad advice from because they'll call the call center at Q Super or Sun Super or wherever that is. And look, I'm not privy to the phone calls, but I know how they go.
Yeah.
And, we've joked about, or we haven't joked, we've, I guess it's not a joking matter, but about the lunacy of risk profiles. And they'll talk to people on the phone and they'll say, they might even go through a short risk tolerance questionnaire. Yeah. Now, we're in the middle of a bloody market downturn. Of course, someone's risk
the tolerance for risk is
the tolerance for risk is high in their mind and it's down. So they'll say words to the effect of, well, you don't have much of a tolerance for risk. Yeah, you probably should move to cash now and wait until things settle down. Never fully explaining the true cost of that.
Yeah,
and you can probably tell by the tone of my voice how cranky that makes because we're talking about people's real people's livelihoods here, and absolutely by making that one mistake, their retirement is going to be affected forever.
Yeah. It's sort of one of those things where you go, I think that if people, obviously, it's not a time when people are really stopping and calmly thinking about it. It's we all know that there's no free lunch. If you think I'm watching my super balance drop, I don't want that pain. Is there a way? And realistically, what people are sort of wanting is there a way to not have that pain, but without actually giving anything up? And that's the problem with this is that, like you said, that the person in that call center is not saying, look, you can move into cash. However, this means that your super balance over the next 10 years will not grow as much as it needs to. You will not be where you need to be retired. All those, they basically just give them the glib short answer of, you can move into cash and then it won't drop any further. And that's, it's a bit like, if you think of anything else in life, there's nothing's free. If you want to be fit and healthy, you have to eat right, you have to train, you have to do all those things. You have to put yourself through a bit of pain to get the results. It's not just, there's no dietitian that just says, eat ice cream, eat biscuits, do whatever you want. Yeah, it'll all work out. It'll all be fine. We know instinctively that that's not how the real world is, and yet when it comes to money and something that's really emotional, it's easy to sort of trick ourselves that we can have our cake and eat it too.
That's right. So, look, good time to sort of move on from and fast forward the 10 years.
Yeah.
So the person that just held their fortitude, watched their balance drop from 500,000 to 375, and perhaps lower than that.
Yeah.
Did nothing, just waited until it recovered, and then continued to grow along its merry way. $500,000 grows to just shy of $1 million over the last 10 years of their working life, to $995,000. So the person that moved out and moved into cash, waited till things settled down, then moved 375 back in, which is what they sold. It's precisely what they sold out. Yeah. They end up with $741,000 at retirement. So, look, it's cost them $254,000 in that scenario, which is a huge mistake, isn't it? I mean, you see, okay, well, I've moved out and I moved back in. Geez, that cost me $125,000. Where people believe, I'm not sure that anyone who's doing this appreciates that's the cost of it.
No,
but the cost isn't $125,000.
Yeah.
It's actually $254,000 because it's what that money would have grown to over.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I don't think either parts of those, because they're so intangible, I don't think either of those two things are, as we said, when you're ringing QSuper, when you're ringing Sun Super, and someone at the call center is saying, oh yeah, you can move into cash. They're not saying, hey, it could cost you $125,000, but they're also definitely not saying over the next 10 years it could cost you $250,000.
Yeah, and if you take it even further from that, it's not $250,000. It's $25,000 a year, or it's $20,000 to $25,000 a year of tax-free income that you could have drawn each and every year of your retirement forever and a day. It takes a long time for that $254,000 extra to run out at the rate of you taking $20,000 to $25,000 a year. That's 2 overseas holidays every year. You know, it's a whole host of choices that these people that haven't made that mistake have. Compared to someone that's just made this just one mistake, mistake.
Yeah, and that's I think the hard thing about retirement planning, or just making financial decisions in general, is to think about the fact that the future version of you is the person that is going to be impacted by this. So if you said to a 55-year-old, hey, you can do this, you can move into cash, but by the time you're 80, if you do this, by the time you're 80, you're definitely going to have run out of money. So you're going to have to move in with your kids or do something, or you're just going to have no money at all. You're going to be living on the age pension. Versus if you do not make this mistake, things will look dramatically different for you at the age of 80. So it's sort of sometimes hard, like you say, to not just take into account what the cost is now, not just take into account what the cost is in 10 years' time, but go, what does that mean for me lifestyle-wise in that first 10, 20 years of my retirement, and what choices does that take away from me?
Yep.
We're probably a bit, what's the word, evangelical about this. I feel like we're sort of like the old school preacher standing up, bashing on the pulpit, talking about it. But it is something, obviously, that I think most people could tell we feel pretty strongly about it.
Yeah, we certainly. I hope it's coming through. You can't see this, but the whole time I've been speaking, I've been shaking a pen in my hand.
Yeah. I've got a mental image of it,
because for the audience, Dallas and I aren't actually in the same room. Of course, with working from home, we recording this podcast from our respective houses. So he can't see me, and no one listening can see me. But as I've been speaking, I've had a pen in my right hand, and I've been shaking it. Because I do feel strong. What I feel strongly about is that extremely hardworking people can only make one mistake, and if they just make this one mistake, it costs them $250,000 by the time that they retire. And not only that, like we said, it costs them so many choices in retirement, because it's $20,000 to $25,000 a year of income that they could be drawing from that extra $250,000.
Yeah,
and how many choices does that give you in retirement? So I guess that's where I and without getting too much into into the differences between industry funds and so you can have very good industry funds as well, but
and I think that's the whole point.
The problem is the problem is that they send a message, and it's the wrong message, and it's the wrong message at precisely the wrong time, which is right now. Obviously they can't handle the magnitude of members calling in. And they'll do anything to appease the short-term pain. And it's just wrong. Look, it's just wrong.
Well,
and it's going to cost people.
The issue is, like anything, whether it's an industry fund, retail fund, any type of fund, it's the same issue, which is if you have a portfolio without a plan, if you have some money in super but you have no plan or no direction as to what is the point of that money, what is my intention with that, where do I need to be getting to, and how do I need to make that happen? If you don't have that plan, it's impossible to not just react in the short term. You don't understand what the deeper meaning of the decisions you're making is, and you just end up making, like you said, one mistake, and it doesn't feel like a big thing at the time, and it basically makes a huge difference to you in the future.
Look, I think like we said before, we touched on it. The next podcast that we do, I think we'll talk about the importance of having a plan and actually how and why that makes sense for our clients. And how and why, when we're having what we're having now, which is markets dropping by 30%, 36%, 37%, how and why our clients don't panic because of that plan that's in place. So this will basically be the cautionary tale of what will happen if you make a mistake now, or if you don't make all of the right choices, and then maybe a bit of a good news podcast for the next one as to here's all the things that you can do and the things that you can take control. Well, it is. They're good to listen to. We know that a lot of our existing clients listen to our podcast, but we also know that a lot of people that aren't clients listen to our podcast. So if you have made this mistake in the last few weeks, and it would only be in the last few weeks that you made these mistakes. If you made this mistake and you've moved your money to cash, or if you're thinking about doing so, please, we implore you to get in contact with us, because we'd only be too happy to sit down with you and have a look at that on an individual basis. Just so it's not too late. It is not too late. So even if you moved out at 36% down and the markets now are only 23% down. Look, that will cost you a little bit of money, of course, but it won't cost you $250,000. Like if you move that money back in at now, even though you've missed out on something. But so I mean, please, we'd implore you to contact us to have that discussion. So you can reach us at lighthouseadvisors.com.au.
Yeah, that's a great place to wrap up.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.